Right, so the look on Benjamin Netanyahu's face when Donald Trump said he was talking to Iran was priceless, wasn't it? It was a look of shock and disbelief and fear, frankly, that maybe, just maybe, Trump wouldn't push ahead with military action against Iran over their nuclear development programs. The Israeli claims that Iran is researching nuclear weapons have been dismissed not only because Iran has signed up to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, not only because there is a religious fatwa in place forbidding the creation of such things in Iran, but also because the US's own intelligence have on more than one occasion confirmed Iran are not doing this. Israel themselves, though, that's a whole different matter, isn't it? But Iran are Israeli adversaries. They fear Iran more than anyone else in the Middle East, and Netanyahu has desperately wanted the US to go to war with Iran on his behalf for quite some time. And with a president as unhinged as Trump, his best chance of this was surely on the cards. And now maybe it isn't. Well, that of course assumes Trump's administration would be honest brokers, and Iran themselves, well, they're certainly not taking that for granted. Right, so in a move that certainly stunned Benjamin Netanyahu on his second trip to Washington since the copper-coated cretin that is Donald Trump became president again just 4 months ago, my God, this second term already feeling like an age, Trump announced direct negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program. That actually weren't direct talks at all. Iran had refused to have these, but indirect talks are due to happen, mediated by a man and conducted entirely behind Israel's back, it would appear, because they didn't know anything about them. The revelation has left Israeli officials scrambling somewhat, therefore, as panic ensues, fearing in the immediate aftermath of that revelation that their efforts to push the US towards war with Tehran had emphatically failed, and so it may well still prove to be the case. The stakes for the Middle East, though, never mind just Israel and its depraved desires, couldn't be higher. A failed deal here risks catastrophic wider war, economic instability across the Middle East, and a regional arms race. Yet as Iran prepares for potential US aggression, the question remains as to whether Trump is truly interested in diplomacy, or is this just another ploy to justify madness from him in nobody's interest except Benjamin Netanyahu's? Now, it's a matter of fact now that for years Israel has lobbied relentlessly for the US to take military action against Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu has repeated ad nauseum, without any conclusive evidence at all, that Iran is on the verge of developing nuclear weapons. Despite Tehran's consistent denials about this, its adherence to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, signed up to that as they are, the NPT, Israel, by contrast, has never signed the NPT and maintains an alleged undeclared nuclear arsenal estimated as somewhere between 80 and 90 warheads. But it's Israel. Different rules always apply to them, as per usual. So when Trump revealed that the US was engaging in talks with Iran, Israeli officials were caught off guard. Netanyahu's government was embarrassed and shocked by the announcement, no doubt as a result of having spent years pushing for maximum pressure on Iran. Not diplomacy at all. They're not interested in that, are they? The talks with Iran, despite Trump's claims to the contrary, though, will be indirect. Iran has made it abundantly clear that it will not negotiate under duress, as has been their experience with the US before. That is why the talks, due to start this weekend, are being held indirectly, mediated by a man rather than face-to-face. Tehran remains deeply sceptical of US intentions, and for a pretty good reason, you might imagine. You see, even as talks are set to proceed, never mind everything that's happened before, as talks are set to proceed this time, the US has increased its military presence in the region. Another aircraft carrier in the shape of the USS Carl Vinson has showed up to deal with the Houthis on one hand, but also Iran if it comes down to it, with all the arsenal that comes with that. On top of that, and arguably even more a betrayal of any true intentions to negotiate in good faith on the part of Trump, and in true Trump fashion, a move that defies logic, therefore, the US have imposed fresh sanctions on Iran just days before negotiations are set to begin. 5 bans against Iranian organisations for their alleged support for Iran's nuclear programs, despite no nuclear weapons being researched. And these have included the Atomic Energy Organisation of Iran, the AEOI, Energy, Donny, clue is in the name, and the Iran Centrifuge Technology Company, which is a subsidiary of the AEOI. It doesn't matter that US intelligence, their own intelligence, has ruled out nuclear weapon research happening in Iran, even as recently as last month in a report by Tulsi Gabbard on that very subject. It doesn't matter that the UN's own inspectors via the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, have repeatedly stated this as well, having carried out inspections. Frankly, Israeli concerns should be set aside here because clearly Trump and co are still listening to their whining and their excuse-making and their lies rather than hard facts by credible agencies, including their own, in official reports. It is par for the course when it comes to so-called maximum pressure tactics by the US, which is exactly why Iran have refused face-to-face talks. There's little faith on their part that the US is going to engage here meaningfully. But if Iran don't, then it's them that will be making the global headlines, making excuses for Trump to do exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu wants him to. As Iranian officials have argued, how can they believe in US sincerity when Washington tightens the noose, even as it supposedly extends a hand in friendship to them? On top of all that, though, Trump has repeatedly threatened military action against Iran, stating that bombing its nuclear facilities is absolutely possible. Possible, but not necessarily justifiable, eh, Donny? Your claims are possible fly in the face of other US claims as well, from other far more credible people, notably recently by a former Reagan administration official called Paul Roberts, who, given the non-nuclear arsenal Iran purportedly possesses, believes America's waning military dominance would see them humiliated in a fight with Iran like never before. But rhetoric of this nature from Trump proves Iran's concerns justified because they directly contradict the very premise of diplomacy, reinforcing Tehran's belief that the US is not a negotiator in good faith. The focus shouldn't just be on Iran in this context, though, especially given who their most vocal accuser is, because while Israel demands the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program, it refuses to subject its own nuclear facilities to international inspections or to sign the NPT, and where is the pressure on them to do likewise? Non-existent, and this glaring hypocrisy weakens its moral standing, such as that is anyway, in this debate, and that of the US too, who hang on their every word, it seems. As far as Netanyahu goes, though, he has declared that the only acceptable outcome is the explosion of Iran's nuclear program, meaning its total destruction. He has even suggested that if Iran won't dismantle it themselves voluntarily, Israel and the US should do it by force, all flying in the face of those international findings again, all for the sake of nothing but appeasing Israel's paranoia and Netanyahu's hope the US will go to war with Iran, further destabilizing the Middle East, which only benefits Israel. Look at Syria for another example. Israel invading that nation following Assad's fall is all about what is best for the genocidal apartheid state at all times. Well, in light of all of this, Iran has laid out clear conditions for successful talks. There will be no talks conducted under pressure, as aforementioned, hence the indirect format via a man, which reflects Iran's refusal to engage with the US whilst they put Iran under military and economic coercion. There will be no abandonment of their nuclear research either. Iran insists its nuclear program is for energy and medical purposes, and nothing has been found upon inspection to contradict that notion, combined with that religious fatwa that remains in place in Iran against the research and creation of nuclear weapons. And of course, should the US choose to ultimately attack Iran, then Iranian officials have warned that the US aggression will be met with a forceful response, including potentially strikes on American bases scattered across West Asia as they are, many of which are absolutely within reach of Iran. We've seen them reach Israel already without any trouble at all, after all. Given these red lines, Washington's simultaneous military build-up and sanctions only deepen Iranian distrust. But such are the ramifications of a collapse in negotiations and a US-led attack on Iran itself in response. There's every reason to believe this would escalate to and result in a regional war with Iran, capable of striking US bases in Iraq, across the Saudi Peninsula, and across the Gulf area. Should Iran be attacked, then it's entirely plausible that the Iranian axis of resistance, their allies, would likely strike too, including most notably the Houthis in Yemen and potentially Hezbollah in Lebanon, who have remained largely quiet as Lebanon remains occupied in the south by Israeli forces, still allowing the administration of President Aoun to take a lead there. But would that apply if Iran comes under attack by Israel? Economic instability would be how the consequences of these moves would affect us in the West, most of all, with oil prices, well, they would skyrocket, particularly if Iran ends up blockading the Persian Gulf, which they've also threatened to do, facilitating the movement of 20% of global oil shipping as that does. Sanctions on Iran itself will continue to add to the already significant regional poverty, and further escalation would worsen humanitarian crises across the region. There would also be increasing divisions between global powers, with Russia and China very likely to support Iran diplomatically, possibly militarily, though I imagine this to be less likely, while the US and Europe actually remain divided on the subject of Iran. The EU not convinced at all by an attack on Iran being a solution here, for once seeing sense themselves rather than immediately jumping on Trump's coattails. Though I dare say the diplomacy is a bit of a sore point between the two, given the tariffs. But not all European nations would likely see sense in that, though. I can imagine Keir Starmer, for one, will still jump as soon as Donny tells him how high he wants him to. Israel, meanwhile, would push for even greater military dominance, the only winners from this situation as they would be. So these US-Iran talks are absolutely critical. If Washington truly seeks peace, it has to drop its hypocritical demands, it has to ease the sanctions on Iran, in good faith, and halt military threats. I don't believe it does, though. I believe Trump is simply jumping to Netanyahu's tune, ignoring all the facts and all reason, simply because it is Israel. Israel, meanwhile, will become ever more exposed over its fantasy of Iran's total capitulation over nuclear research when it flat refuses to meet any similar demands on it, demands that it would never accept for itself. The alternative, sadly, is war. That long-desired war by Netanyahu, that wider war that would devastate the Middle East, strain the global economy, further erode America's already crumbling credibility, but also at the expense of how many more lives and for what? Just the whims of Israel yet again. For more on the deployment of more US military assets as a possible pretext to war with Iran, and how Iran have fundamentally seen the US coming in all of this, should they actually try anything, check out this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as supporting the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.